Don't forget to click the subscribe button, like it, and also leave a nice comment. Let's begin.
The hot sun beat down on the three friends as they stood panting at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was the summer of 2021, and these three friends were the only people crazy enough to be outside in this heat. "What, are you scared?" teased Salma, who always had a sharp comeback for Omar's jokes. "I'm just saying," he replied. Ahmed, the youngest, nodded his head excitedly. "Let's do it. We're going to have an adventure like the pharaohs." And with that, the three friends started to walk towards the entrance of the pyramid. The kids screamed and ran as far away as they could. They tripped over loose stones and bumped into each other in their haste to get away. Finally, they stopped in another small chamber and turned around to face their pursuer. The walls were also slanted, making it difficult to keep their balance. They walked through many tunnels, each one more scary than the last. They encountered snakes, spiders, and bats, but nothing scared them more than the sound of their own footsteps echoing through the empty chambers. Omar tried to push it open, but it wouldn't budge. They searched for what felt like hours until they finally found the goddess with wings. She was carved on the wall. In the middle was a pool of water surrounded by hieroglyphics. It looked like instructions. The pool was cold and slimy, but they couldn't turn back now. Omar was the first to submerge himself in the pool. He shut his eyes tight and waited. When he opened them, he noticed that he was no longer in the pool. Instead, he was lying on the ground in the same chamber they had started their adventure in. Was it real or just a dream? He looked at Salma, who was also waking up beside him. They were both 10 years younger than before. But as they got up, they noticed that the pyramid was gone. In its place was a small hill. They looked at each other, then at the hill, not knowing what to think. The Great Pyramid of Giza had been nothing but a dream, or was it? "Whoever bathes in this pool will be granted eternal youth," read Omar. "And whoever drinks from it will be granted eternal life," added Ahmed. The friends stared at the pool, unsure what to do next. They had already risked so much to escape the pyramid. What was a little more risk? Ahmed jumped into the pool without hesitation. He splashed around in the water and came out the other side looking 10 years younger. His skin was smooth and wrinkle-free, his hair and beard gone. "Wow," he breathed, looking at his reflection, just like they had seen in the hieroglyphics. "Please help us," begged Salma, but the goddess didn't move or speak. Disappointed, they moved on to the scarab beetle god. He was even less helpful than the goddess. So they went to the last remaining god, the baboon. "Great baboon god, please help us," cried Omar, but the baboon just stared back at him unblinking. "Maybe we need to do something," said Salma. She looked around the room and noticed a small hole in the wall. It was barely big enough for a person to fit through, but she could see a faint light at the end of the tunnel. "This must be it," she said, squeezing through the hole. "There has to be another way out," he said, frantically searching for a solution. Then he noticed some hieroglyphics above the door. They showed the four gods from earlier, each holding a different object. The friends looked at each other, then back at the door. They had to find those gods and ask for their help. Finally, they came to a large room with a pool of water in the center. On the opposite side, they saw a door carved with hieroglyphics. The pool was very still and the surface was like a mirror. The friends stared at their reflections and gasped in surprise. They had never seen themselves before. Their clothes were torn and dirty, their hair and faces covered in dirt and scratches. They looked like they had been through a war. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the friends heard chains dragging metal moans. His skin was wrinkled and brown like the desert sand, and his eyes glowed with wisdom. "Who are you?" asked Omar cautiously. "I am the guardian of this pyramid," replied the old man. "Why are you here?" "We stammered Omar, unsure what to say. "You trespassed, and now you must pay the price," said the man. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "What price?" asked Salma, stepping forward. The man's eyes flashed with anger. "You'll spend the rest of your lives here, trapped in this pyramid forever." The friends screamed and ran for the door. They turned to look back, but all they could see was darkness. When they finally reached the end of the passage, they found themselves in a large chamber filled with mummies. There were dozens of them wrapped in tattered bandages, lying on the ground. The friends stared at the mummies in amazement, not knowing where to go or what to do next. Then they heard chains dragging once again, and they turned to see a mummy at the end of the room. It was slowly rising from its resting place. Its arms and legs creaked as it moved, and its head was bent at an unnatural angle. "Eu gross," Ahmed screamed and hid behind his friends. The mummy shuffled towards them, moaning loudly. It reached out a skeletal finger and touched Omar's shoulder. He screamed and pushed it away, but the finger remained attached to his hand. He pulled with all his might until the finger came off and the mummy collapsed back to the ground. The statue of Ra was standing in the doorway, its eyes blazing with golden light. "Run!" yelled Omar. They didn't need to be told twice and ran deeper into the pyramid. But even still, there was no escaping the dry desert wind as it whistled around them. Before anyone could answer, a loud crash echoed from above them. A huge chunk of rock fell from the ceiling, blocking the passage behind them. Omar realized that the symbols represented the gods of the underworld. "I think we need to pick one of these gods to lead us out of here," he said. "But which one?" The friends stood there, contemplating their options, when suddenly the ground began to shake. The statue of Ra had come to life and was striding towards them. Its eyes burned with golden fire, and its paws were extended as if ready to crush them. "Quick! We don't have much time," said Salma, pointing to the baboon carving. Without thinking twice, the friends ran into the passage. "Oh no!" cried Salma. "We're trapped." Just then, carving on the wall began to glow, the same golden color as the statue of Ra. The friends cautiously approached it and saw that it was depicting the same 4 passages they were standing in front of. "Maybe this will help us," said Omar, trying to be brave. Each passage had a different symbol carved above it. One had a scarab beetle, another a goddess with wings, and 2 others, a falcon and a baboon. After catching their breath, Omar, the oldest at 13, looked at his 2 younger friends and asked if they were sure about this. When they got closer, Omar pointed out something strange. In the middle was a huge statue of a man with a cobra on top of his head. He had the face of a human, but the body of a lion. Who is that?" asked Ahmed, his voice shaking. "That is the great Egyptian god Ra," said Omar, reading from a nearby inscription. "He is the god of the sun and light." As he finished reading, the room suddenly went dark. The friends screamed in surprise and huddled together as they waited for their eyes to adjust once again. But when they looked around, they noticed something incredible. The statue of Ra was glowing faintly, bathing the entire room in a warm golden light. Wow. They all breathed in unison, completely forgetting about their fear. "Did you guys hear that?" he whispered. They stopped dead in their tracks. There was a low rumble coming from inside the pyramid. It sounded like someone or something large moving around. The friends looked at each other, then back at the pyramid. After a few seconds, they decided to follow the sound. "Whatever is in there can't be good," said Salma, her eyes wide with fear. As they approached the opening, the noise became louder and more clear. They could now make out distinct footsteps echoing from deep within the structure. The kids exchanged worried glances before slowly disappearing inside the giant pyramid. Now safe from the blinding sunlight, the friends began to explore their surroundings. The air inside was cool and stale, causing them to cough from the dust. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they noticed that the walls were covered in hieroglyphics. Some showed pharaohs giving orders to soldiers, while others depicted gods riding on the backs of falcons and baboons. A little further in, the passage opened up into a large chamber. The light flickered a few times, and then the friends heard a booming voice echo through the chamber. "Who dares disturb my eternal slumber?" They made it to a large chamber with 4 passages leading out of it. "Which way do we go?" asked Ahmed, out of breath, remembering what he had read earlier. The tunnel was dark and narrow, forcing them to move single file. Shaking with fear, the friends continued their journey. Suddenly the water began to ripple, and the image of an old man appeared in the pool. But when they got there, they found that it was locked. "What do we do?" cried Ahmed, his voice shaking. They raced through the tunnels, desperately searching for the gods. The other friends followed her and soon found themselves in a secret chamber. Omar and Salma shared a nervous glance. Were they really going to do this?